Chosen one, I need you to stop everything you are doing right now. Not in a second, not after this thought finishes, right now. What I am handing you today is not spiritual content designed to make you feel better for 20 minutes before fading into the background noise of everything else you consume this week. This is a documented account of something that happened to your gift behind the scenes of the world you can see. Something that involves real money, real power, and the most unsettling discovery a human being with unlimited resources can make when they decide to study what exists inside you. I do not speak to everyone. This message reached you because what is inside you was identified by someone who spent years and a fortune trying to understand what it is. And when you find out what he discovered, you will never look at your own gift the same way again. I know you have heard that you have a purpose, that you are special, that heaven is on your side. But what I have for you today is different from all of that. Because today I am not going to tell you what heaven thinks of your gift. I am going to tell you what one of the wealthiest and most powerful men on the planet discovered about it, and the reason he never wanted you to know. Subscribe to this channel right now and turn on every notification, because what I am about to reveal does not exist anywhere else. If you are already subscribed, I see you. Genuinely. The fact that you keep showing up here says something about who you are that I will prove before this video ends. Write 777 in the comments if you have ever felt that the gift you carry is larger than anything you have managed to express so far. As if what comes out of you is only a fraction of what exists inside. As if even you have not yet fully measured what you are actually capable of. Stay until the very end, because the heaviest revelation is not at the beginning. It is at the exact point where everything you have carried without understanding finally makes sense in a way nothing else has ever explained. Now I need to tell you about a man. I will not say his name because the name is not the point. What matters is what he did and what he found. This man accumulated a fortune that exceeds any number you would use in everyday life. The kind of wealth that purchases not only possessions but influence, access, and information that the general public never receives. For decades he operated in the circles where real money exists. Where the decisions that shape what happens in the world are made in rooms that never appear in any news coverage. Where the rules of the game are written by the same people who also control the board. And at a particular point in his life, after acquiring everything the world offers to those with unlimited resources, after buying what could be bought and discovering that most things have a price, he encountered something he could not purchase, could not replicate, could not understand where it came from or how it worked. And that disturbed him in a way no financial failure had ever disturbed him. Because men like him do not tolerate what they cannot control. What he encountered was you. Not you specifically in this moment, but the type of person you are, the type of gift you carry, the type of result that happens when someone like you enters an environment, a conversation, a situation that seemed to have no way out. He began observing, and the more he observed, the more the disturbance grew. Because the data did not fit inside the frameworks he used to understand the world. So he decided to study. And when a man with unlimited resources decides to study something, the study does not resemble what you might imagine. It is not a casual search. It is not intellectual curiosity. It is an operation. With budget, with team, with methodology, with the very clear objective of understanding what is happening and then controlling it. He spent years and a considerable fortune trying to dissect what exists inside people like you. And what he found changed what he believed about how the world works. But before I show you what he discovered, I need to tell you about something that most people across the world know on the surface, but that very few understand with the depth the subject deserves. There is a declaration in the book of Proverbs, chapter 18, verse 16, that reads simply in a quick reading, but that carries a spiritual mechanic that the billionaire discovered through data, and that the Bible stated thousands of years earlier. A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men. Read it again, slowly. The gift makes room, not the effort, not the strategy, not the network of connections, not the degree, not the right family. The gift, and brings him before great men. Not suggests that maybe you will get close to influential people if you work hard enough. Declares that the gift leads you to them as the natural consequence of the gift being exercised. But here is what most people who know this verse never notice. The text does not say the gift leads you to great people who want to help you. It says it brings you before great men. And not all the great men you reach have good intentions toward what you carry. Some want to learn, others want to use, others want to contain. And the billionaire who studied you was in the third category. Now I need to tell you what his research found. The team he assembled worked with a methodology that combined behavioral analysis, historical research, and something the researchers called residual impact mapping. Residual impact mapping is the study of what remains after a person leaves an environment, not what happens while they are present, what stays after they are gone. Have you ever entered a place or spent some time there and after leaving someone who was there, felt that something had changed without being able to explain what? Have you ever had a conversation with someone in a difficult moment, then continued with your own life, and weeks later that person reached out to tell you that the conversation had changed something you did not even know you had touched? Have you ever simply existed in a space and later discovered that people who never even spoke to you directly were affected by your presence? That is residual impact, and it is what the Billionaires team was mapping. The pattern they found was consistent to a degree that was disturbing for people accustomed to working with probabilities. Where people with the type of gift you carry were present, the surrounding environment changed in ways that statistical models classified as improbable. Not impossible, but improbable enough that the team had to review the methodology multiple times before accepting the data as valid. People made different decisions than they would have made in identical circumstances without your presence. Situations that were on the path to collapse found a stability. There was no practical reason to exist. Resources appeared from directions that no cause and effect logic could fully explain. And the quality of something the researchers found themselves calling hope in the environment increased in measurable ways. Measurable hope, not subjective feeling. Something with verifiable impact on behavior, decision-making, and outcome. The billionaire read the reports and went quiet for a time that those who knew him described as unusual for someone accustomed to processing information rapidly. Then he asked a question the team had not anticipated. He asked where it came from, not the gift itself, where the source of the gift came from. And it was at that point that the research entered territory that the billionaire, with all of his material formation and all of the skepticism built over decades in the corporate world, had not prepared to navigate. For those who want to go deeper into what it means to carry this type of gift consciously, and how to operate it with real intention, there is exclusive material in the description and pinned comment of this video. Now I need to tell you what the Bible says about the origin of what you carry, because it is not something you developed. It is not something you earned through effort. It is not the result of choices you made. Paul wrote in his first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 12, one of the most complete analyses on the subject that exists in any spiritual tradition on the planet. He says there is a diversity of gifts, but the same Spirit. A diversity of ministries, but the same Lord. A diversity of operations, but the same God who operates all things in all. Diversity, but the same source. That means what you carry and what another person carries are different expressions of the same origin. Like different rivers born from the same mountain, the path each travels is unique, but the water is from the same source. And then Paul says something that is the heart of everything I need you to understand today. He says the manifestation of the Spirit is given to each one for the profit of all. For the profit of all. Not for your personal comfort, not for your self-fulfillment, not so you feel good about yourself. For the profit of all. What this means in practice is that the gift you carry was specifically calibrated to resolve something that exists beyond you, to cover a gap that would not be covered without the gift specifically you have, to reach something or someone that can only be reached through the specific expression of what lives inside you. This is what disturbed the billionaire when he understood it, because he had spent decades building systems that depend on scarcity, systems where the value of something is directly connected to the fact that few have access to it, systems where whoever controls the resource controls the outcome. And he discovered there is a category of resource that does not obey these rules. A genuine spiritual gift does not deplete when exercised, does not lose value when shared, cannot be stored by one person and withheld from another. It functions exactly opposite to everything he had learned about how resources work. The more it is exercised, the more it expands. The more it is shared, the more it grows in the one sharing. The more it is given, the more it returns. This is not motivational language. It is the actual mechanic documented in multiple biblical texts and verifiable in the experience of anyone who has operated consciously in a genuine gift long enough. And for someone whose fortune was built on the opposite principle, understanding this was more than an intellectual discovery. It was a crisis, because it meant the model he used to understand how value works was fundamentally incomplete. And men who build empires on incomplete models have a problem when they discover the incompleteness. Now I need to show you how this connects directly and concretely to your life. Think about the moments when you exercised what exists inside you without calculating the return. Not what you did hoping for recognition. Not what you did because there was a visible reward. What you did because it was what there was to be done. And you were the one present to do it. A conversation you had with someone who had no way to pay you back for it. A presence you offered in a moment where there was no obvious benefit to you. A word you said that came from somewhere deeper than your conscious reasoning. You probably did not file those moments as achievements. They are not the type of thing most people put on lists of accomplishments. But in the spiritual record, which is infinitely more precise than any human measuring system, those moments carry weight you have never dimensioned. Because every time a genuine gift is exercised without calculation of return, something happens at the spiritual level that the Billionaires' research identified in the data without being able to name correctly. The team called it asymmetric multiplication. The impact generated was consistently larger than what the invested energy should produce according to any cause and effect model. The proportion did not close. A 30-minute conversation generated changes that would normally take years of intentional work to produce. A presence of a few hours in a crisis environment produced stability that there was no sufficient explanation for having happened. The right word at the right moment unlocked in another person, a process that had been stuck so long that the person had stopped expecting it to move. The billionaire spent months trying to model the mechanism behind asymmetric multiplication. He wanted to understand the equation, he wanted to replicate the process. He wanted to isolate the variable that produced the result so he could apply it systematically at scale. And it was in that attempt that he discovered what none of his models could capture. The mechanism does not work when you try to control it. The asymmetric multiplication happens specifically when the gift is exercised without the calculation of return. When it is given because it is what there is to give and not because there is an expectation of what will come back. The moment the intention includes controlling the outcome, the phenomenon does not reproduce with the same amplitude. He had discovered something his models could not process. A resource that grows when given without calculation and diminishes when retained with strategy. And he understood that people like you, people who operate this gift naturally and without the calculation he had spent decades cultivating, had access to a form of impact that all of his capital could not purchase. But wait, because what comes next is what will make everything I have said so far make sense in a way it never has before. The billionaire was not inspired by this discovery. He was concerned. Because if there is a form of impact that cannot be bought, controlled or replicated by the systems that the powerful use to keep things as they are, then that form of impact represents something they cannot predict. And what cannot be predicted is what most threatens those who depend on predictability to maintain control. So the study that began as curiosity became strategy, not to amplify what people like you have, to understand how to contain it. And here's what he mapped as the most efficient containment mechanisms. The first is systematic exhaustion. If someone with a genuine gift is constantly occupied surviving, solving immediate problems, working only to cover the basics, the gift exists, but has no space to be exercised in the amplitude that would produce real impact. It is not necessary to destroy the gift. It is sufficient to keep the person with the gift busy enough with the immediate that the significant finds no window of expression. Do you recognize this in your own story? The second mechanism is identity isolation. If someone with a genuine gift is convinced that what they have is not special, that everyone has the same potential, that what they feel is exaggeration or illusion, the gift exists but the person does not operate from the consciousness of what they carry. A gift not consciously operated still produces impact, but it produces a fraction of what it would produce if operated with the awareness that it is real and has reach that goes beyond the immediate. Have you ever felt this? As if what you perceive about yourself is too much to be real? The third mechanism and the most subtle of all is purpose redirection. If someone with a genuine gift is spending most of their energy pursuing objectives that do not correspond to the purpose for which the gift was given, the energy exists, but is being directed toward places where it will not multiply in the way that asymmetric multiplication produces. It is not necessary to prevent the person from using the gift. It is sufficient to make them use it in directions that do not activate the full mechanism. When the billionaire finished mapping the three mechanisms, one of the researchers on the team made an observation that stopped the meeting. He said the three mechanisms had not been created by anyone, that they are structures that have existed in the world for a long time, that the research had not discovered new tools. It had discovered that the old tools function exactly as designed. And then he mentioned something that the billionaire, with all of his distance from the spiritual universe, had not expected to hear in an empirical research context. He said the three mechanisms appear described in a text 2,000 years old as the specific strategies used by the adversary against those who carry gifts that threaten what operates in darkness. The billionaire asked for the text. It was Paul's letter to the Ephesians. Chapter 6, Principalities, Powers, the rulers of the darkness of this age. The system the research had mapped through contemporary data was described with precision in a document that had existed for millennia. And the billionaire, who had built an entire life on the premise that what cannot be measured does not exist, found himself looking at the data from his own research and at the ancient text and realized the structures were identical. This changed something in him that no financial conquest had ever changed, because it meant what he had mapped as a containment strategy was not human invention. It was the expression of an opposition far older than any economic or political system. And the people being contained were not random targets, they were specific targets, with specific gifts. That represented specific threats to something that operates in darkness and that recognizes what you carry, long before you recognize it yourself. Now I need you to do something before I continue. Think about one area of your life where you constantly feel occupied with the immediate, without arriving at what actually matters. Think about one aspect of what you carry that you systematically minimize when people around you recognize it. Think about one purpose that you feel exists, but for which there never seems to be enough time, energy, or circumstance. You do not need to answer out loud. Just identify. Because what I am about to show you now is the direct answer to each of those 3 points. There is a scene in the book of Nehemiah that most people know superficially, but that contains a complete map of how someone who carries real purpose responds to every attempt at containment. Nehemiah had received an impossible mission: rebuild the walls of Jerusalem in a time frame that the analysts of the period would classify as unrealistic. In an environment where the opposition was organized, funded, and determined to prevent the reconstruction from happening. And the opponents used exactly the 3 mechanisms the billionaire mapped. First, they tried exhaustion, constant attacks that required constant response. Pressure that never ceased so that attention could never fix itself on the main work. Then they tried identity isolation. They called the project weak. They said what was being built had no substance, that a fox could knock down what the workers were raising. Then they tried redirection. They invited Nehemiah to a meeting, a conversation, a dialogue, apparently reasonable, apparently well-intentioned. And Nehemiah's response to that third attempt is the most powerful declaration that exists about how someone with real purpose responds to containment. Chapter 6, verse 3. I am doing a great work so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease while I leave it and come down to you? 4 things in that sentence. First, recognition of what he is doing. I am doing. Present. Active. In progress. Second, qualification of what he is doing. A great work. Not just any work. Work with weight and significance that justifies protecting the time and energy. Third, declaration of position. I cannot come down. It is not a matter of not wanting to. It is a matter of not being able to. Because coming down would mean abandoning something that cannot be abandoned without a cost not worth paying. Fourth, the question that needs no answer. Why should the work cease while I leave it and come down to you? The question itself is the answer. There is no sufficient reason. No conversation, no meeting, no negotiation is worth interrupting what is being built. And the walls were completed in 52 days. 52 days. A project the opponents believed would never be completed. Completed because the one carrying the purpose did not come down from the work to attend what containment sent disguised as urgency. Now I need to tell you what the billionaire did with everything he discovered. After years of research and arriving at the conclusion that what people like you carry cannot be purchased, replicated, or completely contained, he made a decision the team did not expect. He decided to stop trying to contain, not because he changed sides, not because he had a conversion, but because the research had demonstrated that containment has increasing cost and decreasing efficiency. The longer someone with a genuine gift remains in operation, the more consciousness that person develops about what they carry, the harder and more costly the containment process becomes. And at a certain point, the equation inverts. The cost of containment exceeds the benefit of containment. He had reached that point with the category of person you represent. And then he did something the research had not predicted as a possible outcome. For a study that began as a control analysis, he asked what would happen if instead of containing, he facilitated, not out of altruism, out of strategy, because the asymmetric multiplication he had documented for years represented a form of impact that the systems he controlled could benefit from having nearby rather than in opposition. The answer the team modeled was disturbing to him in a different way than the previous ones. They modeled that if someone with a genuine gift operated with full consciousness of what they carried, without the 3 containment mechanisms active, the impact would multiply not linearly, but exponentially. Not double, not triple, exponential. And the model could not calculate the ceiling because every variable they tried to insert as a limiter was neutralized by the very mechanism they were trying to model. The gift exercised consciously, without containment, without the exhaustion of the immediate, with clear identity and aligned purpose, produced results the models classified as outside the calculable scale. The billionaire read the report and went quiet again, then said a sentence that one of the researchers held onto and later described. He said he had spent decades trying to understand how to accumulate the maximum possible, and had discovered there is a category of person who does not accumulate, who operates on a completely different principle, that the more they give, the more they have to give, that the more they exercise, the stronger what they are exercising becomes, that the more they reach, the larger the reach becomes, and that this category of person is an anomaly in any system built on the premise that resources are finite, because what this person carries does not obey finitude. You are that anomaly, not because you are superior to others, because what is inside you was placed by a source that does not operate by scarcity. And when you exercise what is inside you, you are channeling something that does not deplete, because it was not born from you. It was born through you. And that changes everything about how you should understand what you carry. The billionaire's research ended with a conclusion that no model had predicted as a possible destination for a study that began as a control analysis. The conclusion was that the gift people like you carry cannot be contained indefinitely because its nature is expansive. Every containment attempt that does not eliminate it completely actually creates pressure. And pressure accumulated in something with an expansive nature produces more intense expansion when the pressure releases. In other words, everything that tried to contain you was actually contributing to the magnitude of what happens when you operate without containment. The exhaustion that prevented the gift from being exercised in full amplitude was accumulating potential waiting for expression. The identity isolation that made you doubt what you carry was creating tension that resolves when identity is recognized and affirmed. The purpose redirection that consumed energy in directions that did not multiply was waiting for the realignment that releases everything that was held back. The billionaire had scientifically documented what the prophet Joel declared spiritually thousands of years ago. Joel chapter 2 verse 25. I will restore to you the years that the locust, the cankerworm, the caterpillar, and the palmer worm have eaten. The years that were consumed being restored, not lost, restored, not replaced by something similar, restored proportional to what was consumed. And what was consumed by the containment was waiting for the release that happens when you understand what you carry and begin operating from that consciousness. Now, I want to tell you something before closing. The billionaire never published the research, not because the results were inconclusive, because they were too conclusive. Research that demonstrates there is a category of gift that operates outside the control mechanisms that power systems depend on to function is not the type of information that those who hold that power want circulating. But the data exists. The patterns were documented, the conclusion was recorded, and you are here now, in this specific moment, hearing this. Not because someone arbitrarily decided to show you, because the gift you carry has its own tendency to find what it needs to be exercised in real amplitude. And what you needed was to know what you carry, not as an abstract concept, as a verifiable reality that people with enough resources to study anything studied, and arrived at the same conclusion that the oldest spiritual tradition declares for thousands of years. The gift you carry is real. It has real impact that goes beyond what you calculated. And everything that tried to contain you was actually building the pressure that converts into amplitude when you operate from the consciousness of what you are. I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. That is your declaration now. Regardless of what arrives disguised as urgency trying to pull you from what you are building, regardless of what appears trying to convince you that what you carry is not enough, is not real, will not reach where you feel it needs to reach. You are doing a great work, and the pressure accumulated during the time of containment is converting into amplitude that none of the models of those who tried to contain you had predicted as the outcome, because the gift you carry was not given to operate within the systems that tried to contain it. It was given to operate beyond them. For those who want to understand more deeply how to operate with full consciousness in the gift you carry, and how the alignment between gift and purpose releases what was held back during the time of containment, there is exclusive material in the description and pinned comment. It costs less than a pizza, and comes with a complete audiobook and a 5-minute meditation guide as a bonus. If everything you heard today resonated somewhere deeper than your mind, write 777 in the comments, as a declaration that you recognize what you carry, and that you choose to operate from that consciousness, rather than from the doubt that containment tried to install. Subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications, because what comes next will continue revealing dimensions of what you carry that you still do not have complete words to describe. Share this video with someone you know is operating below what they carry. Someone who needs to hear that what they feel is large inside them is not illusion. It is real. And the research of those who tried to contain it confirms that. Before you go, click on the video appearing on your screen right now, because what I show you there is the next dimension of what happens when you stop operating in containment mode and start operating in real amplitude mode. Together we are stronger.